Okie dokie. Pickpocket film commentary. In this scene, Michel meets with his honest friend, Jacques, to catch up and discuss job opportunities. Coincidentally, the policeman from the previous scene is at the same bar and the three have a discussion. Let's begin. Now, on a cursory reading of this plea for help, it seems that Michel is earnestly looking for work. However, I believe it can be interpreted two other ways. First, that Michel is attempting to keep up appearances with Jacques, making it appear as though he's looking for work and has not yet resorted to a life of crime in order to pay the bills. Jacques, however, clearly has heard this all before from Michel and doesn't seem to think his request is genuine. However, he helps him anyway. I interpret Michel's inquiry not as him lying to Jacques, but rather as him lying to himself. This highlights the internal struggle of Michel, as he has had an unsuccessful reconciliation of the two sides of himself. One side being how he wants to make a living by robbing and pickpocketing, and the other being how society tells him how he should make a living, through honest work. This internal struggle is a Dostoevskian element of Michel's character that will be on display during the next sequence. Now, filmically, the scene is fairly minimalistic, but notice the mise-en-scènes of Michel's acting as the police officer approaches. His eyes, body, and hands are drawn to the officer, seemingly against his will. Michel even comments that it was stupid to greet him, which is funny as he goes on to speak of his intelligence just minutes later. Michel's movement to the officer may suggest he has some subconscious, or maybe conscious, desire to be caught and judged, which echoes another Dostoevskian trope relating to the brothers Karamazov character, Dmitri. While it is not clear if this desire to be caught and judged is truly the case with Michel, it is clear he struggles over the idea of being caught. This can be observed later in the film when Michel gets visibly and vocally frustrated with the officer, Jacques, and Jean, as they never accuse him of stealing when he thinks they want to. Michel even tells them to accuse him, and they refuse. Furthermore, the framing of the table discussion is telling. Once the speaking begins, Michel and Jacques are never framed together. Though they both pose similar questions to the police officer, they are each framed alone. This visually shows that even though the two of them question the ethics of stealing to the police officer, their philosophies on the matter are still diametrically opposed to one another. In addition, as Michel discusses the idea of an intelligent Superman, he is positioned sitting in front of many bar patrons in the background, in opposition to the officer simply sitting in front of a wall and window. Michel is an individual that stands out in front of a mass of nondescript bodies behind him, a Superman among the ordinary, or at least in his own mind. Now, Michel's rationalization of the actions of this Superman contains elements of Dostoevsky and Nietzsche. Firstly, I've already mentioned some Dostoevskian elements. I compared Michel's possible desire to be caught and judged to the same sentiment of Dmitri, but Michel is more similar to the character of Ivan. Michel rationalizes his philosophy of life through intelligence, just as Ivan does. The idea of, if God is dead, everything is permitted, permeates through Michel's thesis. Let me jump forward quickly to another scene in order to make my point. Right here. This is just quickly with him discussing with Jean. He elucidates to Jean that he doesn't believe in God, and that he believes in the absurdity of laws themselves. For how can he be judged if he believes there is no higher entity to judge him? Michel believes his intelligence has given him the ability to see through the fiction of God, and therefore the fiction of rules in society. While this mentality inhabits a part of his soul, it is clear that he is still conflicted with the concept of being judged, as he asks Jean if she believes in judgment in the first place. This is the unsuccessful reconciliation that plagues Ivan's character in The Brothers Karamazov and plagues Michel throughout the rest of the film until the very end. Now returning to the previous scene. As for Nietzschean philosophy, Michel appears to be the quintessential ideal of the post-Christian individual for Nietzsche, Laws in this discussion can simply be replaced with morality as they are synonyms for one another. Nietzsche claims that while not all morality is cowardice, all cowardice masquerades as morality. Michel is living life how he wants to live, taking full control over his will. Nietzsche says to live life dangerously, build your cities on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, be robbers and conquerors as long as you cannot be rulers and possessors, you seekers of knowledge. Michel absorbs this philosophy and it influences the way he acts and sees the world. Finally, the officer rebuts Michel's claims, positing that his way would make the world upside down. Michel, however, already sees the world as upside down. The conventional views of morality, religion, and laws are absurd to him, and he believes his intelligence has given him the ability to rise above society as a whole. This torments him inside throughout the rest of the film, though, as time and time again he fails to become sovereign, which threatens the truth of his philosophy of the world and in turn feeds his conflicted nature.